Good morning and welcome to the episode of the AddDrop Podcast as we continue our spin through the world of college athletics. Today is definitely a special one. We are joined by Mike Levy. Mike is the Senior Director of Global Rights Acquisitions for FloSports. Mike, good morning. How you doing?
I'm well, sir. Thank you for having me.
No problem. Mike, let me ask you a question you probably haven't heard before. What was it like playing with alongside Rick Ankiel?
Oh, you're coming into the past here. The best athlete I have ever seen. Any sport. Um, I had an experience with him where with the year I was drafted by the Cardinals, the previous season had kind of his very famous meltdown in the National League playoffs against the Atlanta Braves. And they sent him all the way down to the bottom of the minor leagues where I was playing, having just been drafted, and I'm reasonably certain that I was drafted solely to be his bullpen catcher, as kind of this Ivy League guy that could talk to this young kid who came out of high school as an 18-year-old and spend a bunch of time with Rick. So Rick and I spent a lot of time together. Um, and I will say he was an absolutely nasty pitcher. He was trying to make his way back and, left-handed 95 mile per hour with a breaking ball that literally when he released it, I'd never seen or heard anything like this. But when he threw his curveball, you could hear his finger snap when he released it. It was so sharp. They said it was the best curveball since Sandy Koufax. Um, so it was amazing to catch him. He was the best pitcher I ever caught, and when he was on, he was devastating. The bad news for me is that Walt Jocketty, who was the GM of the Cardinals at the time, called down to our manager, Chris Maloney, and said, "Hey, when Rick's not pitching, I want him to keep his mind off pitching." So I was also Yadier Molina's backup catcher. He's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. And so I didn't catch much, and I was DHing quite a bit until Walt Jocketty said Rick's going to hit in between starts. So all my DH at bats went away. And then Rick obviously famously made it back to the major leagues as an outfielder, not as a pitcher. And is one of the very few to have ever done that. So long story short, he was not great for my career. It was a wonderful experience, and he's the best athlete I've ever seen.
Now, when the story is written, you can always tell people, and this is the truth, that you had a higher on base percentage, slugging percentage, and OPS than a future Hall of Famer.
At the time, I was a better hitter. At the
Hey,
time. Yeah, yeah. He was everything behind the plate. I thought I was a defensive catcher until I met Yadier Molina, and he was the also the best I've ever seen. So day one, I knew that wasn't going to be my career.
can you take us through that? I know you hit 2 home runs that year. What was that first home run like?
Oh gosh, we're going to spend this entire time talking about me and baseball. So the first home run I hit, we were in Johnson City, Tennessee, which was our home field. We were the Johnson City Cardinals, and they had like a 30-foot wall in left field. It was actually, interestingly enough, directly next to Steve Spurrier Field, given your football experience. And it was the first time my parents had come out to watch. And so they were just by the first base dugout, in between home plate and the dugout. And I caught a fastball, and it was the furthest home run I've ever hit in my life. I mean, I got it. Um, and I remember crossing home plate, and to get back into the dugout, I had to pass by my parents. And my dad is not an emotive human being. There's just not much emotion coming out of that guy. And I heard him say, "Wow," as I walked by. And I think in that moment, my dad thought I was going to make the major leagues. It didn't last much longer than that, and there was only one more home run after that. But in that moment, I think my dad thought I was going to make it, and it was actually the most memorable home run I've ever hit.
Did you get the ball?
No, I don't think I did. No.
Somebody probably has it. So if anybody's listening, I mean, I know it's been a few years. I'm sure that ball will hopefully find its way to you.
It's worth all of a half a penny. Look at
Hey,
that.
I mean, you managed to live a dream that millions of fans would love to be able to say that you hit a homer in the minors and you play for an organization. What was the
Yeah.
transition like going from player to working on the executive side of the sports world?
I mean, I'm probably the same story as many others. The transition was really difficult for me. I spent my whole life being an athlete, and it kind of ended non-ceremoniously with an injury, and all of a sudden, in a literally a 24-hour period, I had to figure out who I was. So it was a very difficult transition. I ended up bouncing around a little bit, did an internship with Major League Baseball and sold some sponsorships for the SEC. And I will say this about Flow Sports. I'm in my 10th year at Flow Sports, and it is the closest I've ever felt professionally to being an athlete again. Um, because of just the competitive nature that Mark Floriani has created at this company, the ingrained desire to win and perform as a team, to never be satisfied with the result and just to keep going and keep innovating and keep grinding. Um, the way he's built this company has a very athletic, kind of corporate athlete type feel to it. And so, I think one of the things that's kept me here, certainly aside from our growth and some of the very cool things that we're doing, it's just this culture of competitiveness, that hits something for me that I wasn't necessarily getting in other corporate environments, whether that was Disney or Sony or Host Communications, which ultimately became IMG College. Flow has been really unique in that aspect to hit something, some intrinsic value that I wasn't getting elsewhere.
Speaking of, I know that in the last couple of years, Flow has managed to bring so many conferences, regardless of division in the NCAA, under the umbrella as far as being able to provide coverage. What was the initial thought pattern? How have you managed to look at the landscape and kind of know which conferences would be the best fit?
So if you look back on Flow's history, we started in 2006 with Mark and his older brother starting in track and field and wrestling. And the premise at the time was, to speak for them, our sports are underserved. Mainstream media doesn't care about it. Um, why can't our sports be as big in America as football is? Mark's brother Martin had a quote that I love and still repeat to this day, that God didn't come down to the United States and declare that football shall be king. Football was made. It's not the most popular sport in any other country in the world, but here. And it was made through really compelling storytelling, great coverage of the live event, context into why fans and alumni or girlfriends and parents and why they should care. And football is particularly innovative at that. And so when Mark and Martin started this company, they took that same approach to track and field and wrestling, and it worked. And they realized that there was some price elasticity, that they could build a subscription around it, and that people were willing to pay if the coverage was really good or at least better than what existed elsewhere. Fast forward to 2025, they've replicated that model and evolved on it year after year, sport after sport, and the model still holds true. That if there are underserved audiences out there that may not be getting the type of coverage that their sport or their team or their organization deserves, Flow has found a way to amplify those environments, build economies around it, and build a product that fans can enjoy. It's a battle every day. And we work really hard on continuing to improve our product and super serve these fans. But it's working. And Flow has grown enormously since that 2006 when Mark and Martin were rolling around in a van. It's a pretty cool American business story that I'm very proud to be part of. And in terms of what conferences we look to find, it's that same general philosophy that they had in '06 is where are these pockets in NCAA athletics that we believe are underserved, that have scalable audiences and fan bases that aren't being served to what we believe they deserve to be served at, and we invest in them, and then we tell stories around them, and we improve production around them so it's a more enjoyable experience for fans, and we just slowly but methodically grow it year after year after year. And the model works.
Are you surprised about the number of conferences over, let's just say, the last 2.5, 3 years that have aligned with Flow and been able to improve their own multimedia product?
So there's probably two stories. There's the D1 story, and then there's the Division two and Division three story. Um, and I think, Terrence, that the biggest differentiator here that probably doesn't give that most people may not know is how much we care. Um, we are a business founded on growing sport and growing economies for sport. And so in order for that to work, we have to find partners that feel the same way about their properties that we do. It's not that easy sometimes. I think finding the partners that we have in D2 and D3 and even in D1 for that matter, um, are led by executives that feel similarly to Flow, that their rights do have value, that there is fandom beyond where they're reaching today, and that they're also looking for a partner that is invested as they are. And so that's the secret sauce. That's the partners that we're most attracted to, the ones who are like, you know what? We do have a program worth marketing, worth charging fans for, with student athletes that are putting their heart and soul into this. We should too, so that we can then turn around and reinvest back into our programs, reinvest back into the student athletes, to the facilities, to the fan bases, to the alumni. Frankly, before we stepped in, unless you're a particularly wealthy private institution with that money going to the athletics department, those funds have not been readily available. And so we're trying to lean into that and again create that economy so that these universities and these athletic departments can reinvest back into their athletic departments and create a better student athlete experience. If we do that and repeat it and repeat it and repeat it, you only have to look at Division One and the growth that that's had since the 1980s to say, hey, this might be at a different scale, but fan behavior shouldn't be different. Fan behavior really, a fan of Grand Valley State or Susquehanna or name your school, they have alumni that care. We have to create that context for them to stay engaged.
Agreed. Now, one thing I forgot to ask at the opening was you went to high school in Atlanta, played baseball in New England, and got drafted by a team in the Midwest. Do you still follow the game, and where does your MLB allegiances kind of reside right now?
I am an Atlanta Braves fan through and through. Um, I still follow the Cardinals, but since my teammates are kind of out of it, I was attached to the people less than the organization. Loyalty to them for hiring me, for sure. But I grew up in Atlanta. My family's in Atlanta. I'm an Atlanta fan through and through.
What is the one food from home that you missed that you could just go grab from Atlanta that was available for lunch right now?
Oh man, there's a restaurant in Roswell, Georgia that I think is closed now, but they had fried chicken that was just the best in the world. And there's no fried chicken in Chicago where I live now.
Harold's isn't bad, but yeah, it's not like Atlanta. Who's your favorite Brave of all time?
Dale Murphy.
Why do you think it's taken him so long to hear the call from the Hall of Fame?
I think he is about as humble an athlete as we've seen in that generation. And I wonder if that's cost him votes.
You mentioned being a defensive catcher. If you can remember this, I might be a little older, but the catch from Otis Nixon May climbing up the wall against, I want to say Pittsburgh, is that the greatest catch
Yeah.
you've ever seen?
Oh, wow. It's a great question. It's that or the Jim Edmonds catch where he dove like at a straight backwards over his shoulder. That actually, I think, might be a more difficult catch than the Otis Nixon catch.
As a former catcher, did you rely on a quick release or arm strength to kind of control the run game?
Oh, these are great questions. Not what I expected. I was a quick release guy. Unfortunately, I tore my rotator cuff a couple times, and my arm strength just wasn't a big league quality. It was gonna, they were gonna, if I hadn't retired, they were gonna convert me into a second baseman. So quick feet.
There you go. Now, is that something that can be taught, or is that something that is just innate?
No, it can be taught. I'm not a great athlete.
As an Ivy Leaguer, did Dartmouth have a particular rival that whenever you would line up against them when you would play, that you just it was an extra motivation to beat them?
I, to this day, hate Harvard.
As somebody born and raised in Connecticut, trust me, I'm a Yale guy. I'm a Yale fan. Harvard is just
My
not it.
my my boss went to Princeton. I'm not all that favorable of Princeton these days either, but Harvard.
Where do you see Flo's platform as far as being able to expand through college in the next 5 years going to?
We are really genuinely excited by what we've seen in the D2 and D3 space. Um, our desire is to partner with anyone and everyone that wants to monetize their rights. We believe we have enough data now that they all deserve to monetize their rights. And we're going to work with them closely to try and increase their productions and make it a product that they could be really proud of. Hopefully, an enrollment driver at some point, if not already. And then the D1 space is super interesting to look at, right? With all the changes that are happening and the needs for financials, with ESPN's movement in the space, I wonder what the role of FCS conferences and FCS programs and even lower levels, um, beyond the Power Five, whether they're going to need more exposure, revenues, flexibility in their media rights deals, and can Flow be a home for them? I don't see us in a world where we're with the SEC or the Big Ten or Big 12 or maybe on Olympic sports in some future day, but not in football and men's and women's hoops. Um, but again, where rights are underserved and maybe not getting the exposure that they deserve, that's typically where we're looking to fit in.
As a former catcher, you said that you were able to kind of talk to a young pitcher and kind of keep keep his mind a little bit calmer. How have you been able to use that ability in your job?
Sports is innately emotional, right? It's why we love it. It's why so many people want to work in sports. Um, I started off the call with why I liked Flow and the kind of the athlete mentality and the wins and losses and the emotions of a growing company. And we've certainly had losses along the way. Um, and I think the folks that have been most successful at Flow Sports are the ones that have poise under pressure, uh, can breathe a little slower in the intense moments, and stay focused on the big picture, on the relationships, on what winning ultimately is, that it's more of a marathon than a sprint. And a baseball season is so long, right? Um, a year is not made in one game. In Flow Sports, a year is not made in one deal. We are working to build an enduring business that's not all that different from a catcher working with a pitcher on staying healthy and consistent and quality all season long and hopefully for years. I see a
S-
lot of similarities there.
Speaking of being a catcher and being a Braves fan, a former first baseman Sid Bream, when you were in college before the injuries, could you beat him in a foot race around second scoring home?
Absolutely.
Is that the most underrated moment in Braves history?
Is it underrated? I mean, it's an enduring image for me. I mean, I've seen a lot of baseball plays, but Francisco Cabrera hitting the ball between short and third, and Bream covering, and David Justice collapsing on him. As a Braves fan, I don't know that it gets any bigger than that.
It was the kind of moment when you look back, it was a just a progression of events. Would you have Jose Lean, who never makes errors, makes an error, and it just you see Barry Bonds, who had won Gold Gloves to that point and has one of the highest fielding percentage for a left fielder, eight bounce that throws at the plate, and Sid Bream somehow got it under it. And for a moment, America became Braves fans. When you look at just your career from catcher to executive, what is your proudest moment?
Oh man. Um, I don't know that I can. Look, I don't use this phrase often or lightly, but I do feel blessed. Um, you know, I was an okay student, and Bob Whalen, who just retired as the coach of Dartmouth after 36 years, took a chance on me and saw something, um, and helped me get into Dartmouth and gave me a student athlete experience in the truest sense of the word that I would not trade for anything in the world. My best friends are still from Dartmouth. My memories from there are the best. And I think he helped shape me into ultimately a corporate executive. Um, you know, I don't say this just because I work at Flow Sports. Like, we have our ups and downs here, just like everywhere else. What we've built here, I'm tremendously proud of, and it keeps reinventing itself. I remember when Mark asked me to take on Flow Racing, our motorsports channel, and I looked him in the eye and I said, "Who, me?" And he said, "Yeah, you. Go build it." And if you're a motorsports fan, what we've built in Flow Racing is truly ingrained into the fabric of American motorsports now. It's a big deal, and I'm really proud of it. And the team that we've brought in, and the excellence that they've created. You look at what we're doing in hockey now, where we did an acquisition a couple years ago, and now Brian will hold me honest, but I think we're going to distribute over 25,000 live hockey games next year. We will be ingrained into the cultural fabric of North American hockey for the foreseeable future, adding really interesting value in building the fandom of that sport. We've done it in wrestling, we've done it in track and field, we've done it in cheerleading, and now we're trying to do it in college sports. And the ability to build those businesses and then reinvest back into those communities so that they can thrive independent of what Flow Sports is doing, um, is really gratifying. And we get reminded of that on a fairly regular basis. When I hear about an institution can keep an SID employed in part because of the investment that Flow Sports is making, or they can build a pregame show where before they did not have the capability of doing that, or name it. The contributions that we're making are having positive impacts on campus. It's gratifying. That is why we do it. And so I don't think I can narrow it down to one. I think the whole progression of kind of life and career is the journey that I spoke about earlier, the marathon. That's the single most gratifying part. It's not an individual moment.
He is the Senior Director of Global Rights Acquisition for Flow Sports, Mike Levy. Mike, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the AddDrop Podcast.
It's fun, Terrence. Thank you.